You know, if you've been watching the national news, it's easy to think the Canadian housing market is just all doom and gloom. But here in Ottawa, well, the story on the ground is pretty different. So today, we're going to cut through all that noise and explain what's really going on in our city's real estate market right now.
So let's just get right to it. The big question everyone's asking is, what's the actual temperature of the market? Is it a crazy hot seller's market, a chilly buyer's market, or something else entirely? We are going to find out.
All right, here's the game plan. First, we'll start with the big picture, Ottawa versus the rest of Canada. Then we're going to zoom right in on the key citywide numbers. After that, we'll drill down into different types of homes, translate it all into some practical advice, and finally, we'll look at the big X factor that could shake everything up.
Okay, first up, the big picture. While all the national headlines might be painting one single story for Canadian real estate, Ottawa, well, it's pretty much marching to the beat of its own drum. The data shows it's a completely different scene here. Just look at this. The difference in prices is wild. Nationally, prices are down over 3%. But in Ottawa, they're up over 3%. I mean, that's a massive 7-point swing. It tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how strong our local market is. Sales are growing almost twice as fast here, and our inventory is way tighter. On just about every major metric, Ottawa is simply outperforming the rest of the country. And hey, it's not just the numbers saying this. Local realtors, the people on the ground every day, they're confirming it. You just can't paint Ottawa with the same brush as the rest of Canada. It's its own little submarket, and it's defined not by these crazy swings, but by a kind of resilience, a slow and steady pace that really defies all those national headlines.
Okay, so if Ottawa is so different, what's the story on the ground, like right now? Let's zoom in from that national level and look at the key numbers for September. And these numbers, they tell a really fascinating story of a market that's finding its balance.
If there is one single number you need to remember to understand the market today, this is it. 4. As in 4 months of inventory. This one number, it's the key that unlocks everything else we're going to talk about.
So what does that actually mean? Months of inventory, or MOI, is actually pretty simple. It's just how long it would take to sell every single home that's currently for sale. So if it's under 3 months, that's a seller's market. Think bidding wars and chaos. More than 7 months, that's a buyer's market where buyers have all the power. And right there in the middle, from 4 to 6 months, that's what we call a balanced market. So at 4.0, Ottawa is literally at the front door of that balanced territory, a place where negotiation is fair and neither side really has total control.
And, the other numbers, they totally back this up. Prices are holding incredibly steady, up just a tiny fraction of a percent from last year. And get this, even with a big jump in the number of homes for sale, year-to-date sales are still up almost 4% over 2024. So more choice for buyers hasn't really slowed down demand.
But here's the thing. That citywide average, it kind of hides the most interesting part of the story. Because to truly understand what's happening in Ottawa, you have to look at the market within the market.
This breakdown, this is the real story. We're not in one single market here. We're in at least 3, and they're all behaving very, very differently. Single-family homes, they're stable, up a modest 1%. But townhouses, they are absolutely on fire, up a massive 7.8% year over year. And then you have apartments, which are telling a completely different story, with prices actually down almost 2%.
I mean, just look at that gap. The space between these property types is huge. While townhouse owners are seeing some really strong appreciation, the condo market is facing some serious downward pressure. This right here, this is probably the single most important trend for any buyer or seller in Ottawa to understand right now. So, okay, we've seen all the data, we've looked at the charts, let's get practical. What does all of this actually mean for you if you're thinking about making a move this fall?
All right, for buyers, the message is pretty clear. You've got more choice, and you've got more time. And if you're looking at condos, you have some serious bargaining power. We're hearing stories about buyers negotiating deals for 6, even 7% below the asking price. But, a word of warning, if you want a well-priced townhouse, you are still going to face competition. Now for sellers, it's all about one thing, pricing. If you miss the mark, your home is just going to sit there. Townhome sellers, you're pretty much in the driver's seat. But if you're a condo seller, you've got to be aggressive and sharp on your price to even get noticed.
And for sellers, you really need to look at this number to manage your expectations. On average, it's taking 34 days for a home to sell. That's up from 29 days last year. So yeah, the days of selling your house in a weekend, they're pretty much gone. Patience is now part of the game.
So just as the market was kind of settling into this nice, balanced rhythm, a new variable gets thrown into the mix, a real wild card that could change the whole tone for the rest of the year. Yep, on September 17th, the Bank of Canada did something we haven't seen in a long time. They cut the key interest rate. Now, it was a small cut, just 0.25%, but the psychological impact of that could be really significant.
So what does this actually mean for the housing market? Well, on one hand, this cut could give some much-needed breathing room to homeowners who have those variable rate mortgages. But more importantly, it could be a signal to hesitant first-time buyers that the tide is starting to turn, maybe encouraging them to finally jump into the market. It's definitely a key factor that could bring more activity as we head towards 2026.
And that leaves us with a big final question, doesn't it? We have these two opposing forces at play. More homes for sale, which normally cools a market down, and a fresh interest rate cut, which could heat it right back up. So is Ottawa's slow and steady market about to hit the accelerator? Well, that's the story we'll all be watching unfold this winter.